a discussion whether a person is permitted to take law in their own hands. We're going to argue with Rabbi Yehuda and Nachman, where there is no particular loss. You just don't want to go through the hassle of going to a dentator, whether you can take the law in your own hands if you're clear that you are right. And, but if there is a loss, then everyone agrees that you can take matter in your own hand, like in the case of the well. That if I'm going to wait to go to Bezdin, meanwhile you'll take more water than you're allotted, and you'll dry up the wells. Then there's a loss. Everyone agrees that you're permitted. Okay, we discussed the halacha also where we're talking about beating up as in addition, and we said that beating up already based on Rambam Rutenberg, it has to be 100% that had you gone to Dinteda, it would be black and white that you would win. So we're asking a number of questions. We're up to the Gemara now, and Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph Toshma, about 10 lines on the top of the page. Toshma, come in here. And I go into your courtyard, so that was the courtyard, and I fill it up with barrels of wine, barrels of oil, balach, and then the balach chatzah can't get out. So balach chatzah mishaber v'yotze mishaber v'nichnas. He can go ahead and take law in his own hand and break things, and break whatever he wants in order to get out. And even though we said if there's an alternative way, like with the animal, we learned yesterday that if instead of pushing off the animal on top, pull the animal out from the bottom. So maybe he should have gone around and circumvented the barrels. But over here, that it's such a big tircha to go around. By the case of the animal, it's pretty easy. Just pull the animal off or put it around. It's more or less the same. Here, it requires a much bigger effort to go all around the barrels and work your way through, and therefore we don't expect that from you. Says the Gemara. So what does it mean? You're allowed to take the law in your own hands, and even though it's not a question of loss here, but you're allowed to take the law in your own hands. Approved to Rav Nachman. Here we're talking about you're actually having a dispute who owns the courtyard. Why do you think he filled it up with all these barrels? So the other guy believes that the courtyard is his. So you want to go to Bezdin. The only way to get to Bezdin is by breaking your way through. And the and coming back, you want to get your deeds to prove that you are right. So in this case, it's necessary for the Nintay itself. And therefore you're allowed. That's right. Here's not a question of taking the law in their own hand. You're doing the right thing. You're going to a Bezdin. And because you're going to a Bezdin, therefore you... Seems to me it's a big tircha. Actually, Teisha doesn't use the word big tircha. It just says a tircha. We're not going to require you making a tircha. It sounds maybe even... If it was possible, you don't have to bother. Toshma, come in here. Okay, a person, an Eved, decided to stay on beyond the 6 years, an Eved Ivri, so we allow him to stay until Yovel. But after Yovel, he's set free. And for example, he's married to a Shivcha Kananis, while he's an Eved, he's permitted to marry this Shivcha Kananis, a non-Jewish Shivcha, who was forcibly converted. But once he's free, he's not allowed to anymore. So Toshma coming in. So this person who decided to stay beyond the 6 years, Shekol Yamav, the 50 years are up, the Yovel is up. But Rabbi Mesaded by Lotzes, and his master says, okay, enough, go home. And the guy refuses. So the chaval, so the master went ahead and he hit the Eved also by chabura, and he made him a wound. So the question is, does he have to pay compensation to the Eved? How do I know he's potter? He took the law. I know, but he hit another person. When you hit a person, you have to pay. No, but he's trying to get him out of the house, and the guy refuses to leave his house. He's been there most of his life. He doesn't want to leave. How do I know he's potter? Tamalemer, it says, "Leisichu koifer." You shouldn't take koifer loshu, and we darshan to somebody who should be going back to his family, and he refuses. You don't have to pay compensation if you try to force him to go back. Leisichu koifer loshu. So we see that we have a pasuk. We have a pasuk there for the bottom line. You don't have to pay, but you're allowed to take the law in your own hands, and there's no loss over here. Says the Gemara, but yes, we're talking about a case where the loss and this for that is according to everybody. You are permitted to take the law in your own hands. What's the loss? Because the guy's a ganef. So the Gemara, if the guy's a ganef, why'd you keep him in the first place? He's adinu leganef, the hash the ganef. What's going on here? He was a ganef. He was never a ganef. Now that the 50, the year was up, suddenly he became a ganef. The Gemara explains. Ada Eden have a Amos of the Rabbi. Coldman, he was an Eved. He was scared from his master. Ashta, now that he's independent, Leslie Amos of the Rabbi. He's no longer scared of his master, and therefore he'll steal. Another thing is the reason why you're allowed to hit him over here is you're trying to prevent him from doing an aveda. The master gave him a shivcha kananis. As an eved, he's permitted to live with a shivcha kananis, but the moment he's set free, he's no longer an eved. He's not permitted, and it was the master who gave him the shivcha kananis. So therefore, he wants to prevent him from doing an isur. Ad Edna had and you're allowed to hit someone to stop isur, even though you shouldn't. But maybe in this case, because you're the one who gave him, provided him the shivcha kananis, therefore you're permitted. Says the Gemara, Toshma coming here. How many? We're still discussing whether it's permitted to take the matters in your own hands. How many? Certain places the barrel in we had some Mishnah, and somebody else came along and slipped and hurt himself and broke the card. Potter is potter. Because he's walking down the street, it's not his fault, he slipped. Time the niskaba. It's the only reason why he's exempt from paying for the barrel is because he slipped. If he deliberately broke the barrel, chayiv. And Rav said before, we're talking about you filled the entire street with barrels. You filled the entire street with barrels, and you allowed to walk around and knock because you have to walk. So you see, you're allowed to take matters in your own hands. In fact, sorry, the other way around. He was talking about you're not allowed to do it. So you're talking about, he said before, only time with it because he slipped. That's why you're putted. If you would have broke it, you're chayiv. If you broke it, you're chayiv. Why you chayiv? There's a law saying you can't walk through a shusarabim. And we said before, this is a question everyone agrees that if there's a loss, you're permitted to take a law in your own hands. So how come the din is that the only time that you are that you're putted is because you slipped? Had you not slipped, you'd be chayv. Why be chayv? You don't slip. You're allowed to take law in your own hands if there's a loss. I'm supposed to walk through the street. What do you want me to do? Amar Rab Zvid Mashmei the Rabba. So Zvid said the name of Rabba. Who I didn't feel the shavra? No. The Mishnah is talking about even if he deliberately broke the yesterday, he deliberately broke the barrels because you are permitted to take a law in your hands where there's a loss. So why does the Mishnah use the expression he slipped? Say a bigger chiddush. He can break his way through because of the sefer. I did about the Mishnah sefer. In the end of the Mishnah it says, "Im huzik balabai is chayv beniska." What happened? The guy slipped and hurt himself. Not he broke the barrel, but he hurt himself. Then we said the owner of the jug has to pay. That's only if he slipped. But if the guy went kicked his way through the barrels to go and then he hurt himself, then the owner of the jug doesn't have to pay. And that's why the Mishnah talks about slipping, because the main I guess focus of the Mishnah is the second half of the Mishnah, that the owner of the jug is chayv. The dafka nisko, dafka if he slipped is the guy, the owner of the jug chayv. Who azik nafshe, he hurt himself. Taniration nisko, therefore also talks about slipping. Toshma coming here, it says if two men were having a fight and the wife of one of them decide to grab a hold of the male member of the other guy to stop the fight. So it said that she gets punished. Katsoi says kappa that you should punish her and assess whatever the shame is on. Mama is talking about what that she has to pay. Talking obviously he's trying to save her husband. Obviously, trying to save her husband. And L'chayda, if he's trying to save her husband, there's a loss over here. Why can't you take the law in her own hands? Says the Gemara, my lad, that you cannot in any other way save herself. She cannot save herself. And yet you're not take the law in your own hands. I said, no, who told you that? Because she had alternative ways, therefore, you had no right to take the matters in your own hand. It put everybody, because why? Like we had before, you could pull the cow out from the bottom. Why pull it out from the top? So therefore, according to everybody in this case, you now take a look. She shouldn't have done what she did because she could have done other things to prevent them from fighting onwards. So the Gemara, what he's saying to me, but you telling me there was no alternative. Then she be potter. So Aditoni Sefer, why does it say later on? It says if two people were fighting and everything else, it says if she stretched out a hand and she grabbed a hold of the parts to shame the other person. When you it's actually where she stretched out her hand. Is prat l'shliach bezin. It's an exclusion that if the shliach bezin was there trying to prevent it and he did that, he'd be potter. Now why you have to make a distinction between shliach bezin and her, lift like the least in the bedida. Let's just talk about her. Sometimes she's permitted, and sometimes she's not. When do we say that she has to pay for the shame? She had another alternative way of preventing the fight from ongoing, and therefore shouldn't have done what she did, and that's why she has to pay compensation. They had no alternative. Then she is potter. Why introduce a shlich bezin? Let's talk about her. Exactly that. Is exactly what we're trying to say. When do we say that she has to pay? She had alternatives. She has alternatives. She becomes like the extension of Bezin, and she is exempt. So based on this is the Gemara. So when we introduce the Bezin, we're still talking about the woman. We're just explaining, which means really what the Gemara is saying here is when Rav Nachman says you're permitted to take the law in your own hands, even if there's no loss, or Rav Yehuda who agrees that if there's a loss, you're allowed to take. It's not like you're an independent person. We're saying you're a vigilante or something. You become the Bezin because there's a loss, and we can't wait to go to the Bezin that convenes Mondays and Thursdays in some place. You now become the eyes and ears of the Bezin, and you become the shliach of the Bezin and do whatever you have to do. So that's the whole idea, that you are the Bezin. That you are the Bezin. Same concept that Rachrein discussed with Kanoi and Poigenberg. You see, a man consorting with a non-Jew. The din is Kanoi. Poigenberg is this a mitzvah that devolves on every individual, or is it a din of the Bezin and you become an extension of the Bezin? Which from this Gemara here it would seem that why would comparing the shliach Bezin? What are we introducing that for? So it must be that she becomes the shliach Bezin, which is interesting. Tashma Kameneh, so we go back and just try to bring different proofs. How did you say let's say there was a public road going through your field, and there was a public access way. Not he decided enough. This one walking right in the middle of the field, so he gave them an access way on the right side of the field, let's say. And so they'll get the rabbim are very happy to accept it, but he didn't give up. Whether he likes or not, he didn't give up the easy way that the people used. Now the question is, but the fact is, it's his property, and he provided him another alternative method, another road. So he should be able to sit there, stop them, link piece of relays, let him take a stick there and sit there by the road, and not allow anybody to pass through his property. Say, you want go on the other side. I just gave you another easement there. Because you're telling me that the new road that I gave belongs now to the public, which means what you're really saying is it's a good swap. It's not an additional gift. It's a good exchange. So I mean, happy halacha, the access way that they had going through the center of my field is no longer belongs to the rabbin because I gave them an alternative trail or path. So now I should be able to retrieve it. Okay, the people are still going through. I should be able to sit there and stop them. Why can't I? If you say that you can take dinner and nafshe, and this would be a question according to everybody. No, we're saying it was his place, right in the middle of all of his field. People started to use it as a shortcut. They use it as a shortcut. So then he gave them another way to walk, and so it sounds like, and that other way became the rabbim. So in other words, it's a good swap. You're right. Min hadin, it's a good swap. But the rabbi said that the original easement or the original road should also remain the communal property, because otherwise people start getting advantages. They'll give you some terrible way of going, a very long roundabout way, or a difficult way to walk. So therefore, it's that the original easement remains as well. And Meshasha said not because a gzeira means because according to you, every single time you cannot do that. Meshasha says talking about a case where he gave them a kruma way, gave them a very crooked way of walking. That's why he doesn't give up his main easement and still belongs to the rabbi. And Ravashi says, it is, that's sort of they're both right. That's what exactly, because whatever is more convenient for one person is less convenient for another person. Mashenkev is right in the middle of the property, and that's what people are used to going, and that's how it is. That's why you don't give up the original, but so then the question is, why are we saying that what? That he doesn't get his property back, and the new road he gave them belongs to them. Tell him, he said, why can't he tell them, take yours and give me back mine? Because of Rabbi Yehuda. Why can't he argue? I'm giving you a new road, give it back to me. Also the calculate. Once there's an easement here, And in fact, Goyish law as well. If you have an easement that 15 years was used in a certain way, even though it goes through private property, or let's say council land, council thing that nobody uses, you can take over property and take it over and make it part of yours. So this easement has been used for a long time, therefore you can no longer take it back. Okay, talking about it further, Toshma coming here, Balabai, you need to pay him. Beside Echel, the Balabai is left corner of his field on one side for the poor. Ubaran even up beside Achen, the poor people misunderstood whatever, made a mistake, and they took them another corner. Is ever the payer? The new part is payer, but so too the part that you left behind as payer is also payer. So now you have to give payer, double payer. If a person can take the law in his hands, the fact that you don't have to give two pay, you only give one. A miser was a pay a link, piece of relation. Let him sit there and say, look, you guys took away pay in another corner. Forget about this pay over here. Omar Rabbi says, Rabbi, you're right. He could do that. That's not what we're saying here. When we say Zevah pay, it has dinim of pay regarding the benefit to this balabus. What do you mean? Because the din of pay is that you are potter from giving meiser. Pay is, according to Shammai, pay is like hefker. Hefker don't give meiser. Or it says a bo halevi of the Levi should come and get this meiser, but if he is entitled to this for other reasons, he doesn't get meiser from this. Since a Levi, if he's a poor person, is entitled to the payer, he has no right to collect meiser. So therefore, if you made it payer, you made it hefker, whatever it is, and then you take it back, you're potter for meiser. So when we say zev payer, not that the poor have a right to take the second corner. They don't have the right. But now that since you generally made it payer, so it's hefker, when you take it back now, you're a potter for meiser. That's what means zev payer. So nothing to do with other dinner or nafshe or not. Of course, you have a right to stop them from taking that payer. My zevezel payer lepoitim in the meiser to exempt you from meiser. How do I know that? It's kind of the meiser. I'm after this karma. You let's say you made your vineyard hefke vihishke baboike, and then in the morning you decided to clean it again ubotzra, and you cut the grapes off chayiv bepedet shikha. All the dinim that you have, when you cut under, they're not ready yet ripe, or you left behind a couple of branches. All that still applies. But pay it. You have to give pay as well. Even though you made it hefker, but now they took it back, the dinner come back. It says an extra, it says twice tazav, you should leave it for the poor. The second one is that even though you made it hefker, if you took it back, you got to give it to the poor. But upotem and the meiser. Meiser, you are potter, because it doesn't mention at all that second extra tazav. Okay, so we're talking about payer being hefker. Fraser brings us that the machlekes beishama b'sil. Where do you learn hefker from? According to Beishama, you learn hefker from payer, which therefore he says that you can make something hefker and limit the market. Say, I'm making this hefker, but I only want poor people to be able to acquire it, not rich people. Where do you find a hefker that I still can pull the strings? Payer. That's where you learn it from. And Hill says no, you learn it from Shemitah. Just like Shemitah, it's for everybody. It's not just for the poor. Everything that you have, all your land is all your produce, whatever grows in the Shemitah is hefker. For who? For everybody. And that's where you learn hefker. So hefker can only be hefker lakol. The hefker is for every person. You cannot limit the hefker. But in a way, they're arguing us from if hefker means giving it away to the world, or hefker means I'm walking away from it. If I'm giving it away, I can decide who I give it to. If I'm walking away, I have nothing to do with it anymore. How can I decide who can take it? Says the next mission, your barrel broke in Edishus Rabbi. Let's say now we know there's a thing called boyer. We had that boyer. If in the middle of the Shus Rabbi you dig a hole and people fall in, it's a boyer. And that in itself is a machlekes tanaim, where the boyer is in the Shus Rabbi, because some tanaim hold it's not yours. How can you be responsible? They hold that a boyer is only if you dug a hole in your property, and then you made the surrounding area hefker. So when you dug the hole, it was you, and you kept the boyer. Oh, so there's an owner here. So then you're responsible when anybody falls in. But if you made a boyer in the middle of the street, that's nothing to do with me. So you're potter. And the other tanaim holds no. Abelazar holds, we'll see. He says no. That even if Shus Rabim, the boyer is yours. We also have machlekes Rabbi Shmuel. If you dug a boyer in your property, then you made the property around you hefker, but you retained ownership of the boyer. According to Rab, that's not boyer. Then according to Rab, that's shor. Your possession is causing damage. And according to Shmuel, that is also boyer. And whatever the laws of boyer are applies there. And according to that, whatever the laws of shor apply there. For example, a boyer, if vessels fall into a boyer, you're exempt. So if this object is, I'm responsible because it's my possession, then I have to pay for, destroying your kalim, your vases or whatever it is, your pots and pans. But if it's because of a boyer, if you convert a boyer, I am pot. Okay, says the Mishnah, Nishbar Kaddish. I mean, somehow the barrel broke in the middle of the street. And water spilled out, and somebody slipped in that water and hurt himself. Now, even though boy, you're potter from Adam, that's only if the person dies. But if the person gets hurt, you're responsible. Pieces of the jug fell apart, and the guy slipped and hurt himself. Chayiv, you are chayiv. Gemara will explain what's going on here. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Bimis gavin." If you had intention, we'll see Gemara later. If you had intention to keep the pieces of this jug, then chayiv. But be'enos gavin, you had no intention of keeping the pieces of the jugs like hefker, then potter, you're potter. And Gemara will explain what's going on here. Sorry, exactly. Says Rabbi Yehuda name Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said name the Rav. I believe that this is like boy. So what am I responsible for the clothing? That what if they dirty the clothes and you ruin the clothes, you have to pay in the water. You slipped in the water. But if the person himself got hurt, he slipped in the water and he hit the ground. Why will you potter? Why even if you want to learn that this water is like my possession, but if my animal hurts somebody, I'm responsible. Why the person hurts? So there's a big machlekes in the Nun Rav Shmuel. When you dig a hole in the ground, according to Rav, why should I be chai if somebody falls and hurts the head against the sides of the bird? Karka oilimi. This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Hashem. It belongs to the world. So Rav says what you created was the stale ear, havola, the ear, and if it's the havola, the change of ear that causes the damage, and therefore you're paying for the havola. We'll see the Gemara discuss that later. Shmuel says you chai for both, either havola or chavata. So if you slip in this water and you hit yourself on the ground, so what caused the damage? The water caused it, but what actually made the damage? The ground. The ground belongs to the world, so you don't have to pay. But according to Shmuel says that if you hit the ground right where the water is, not if you hit the ground somewhere else, right where the water is, it's my boer, it's my chabata, because he holds chabata also. Because I created the situation that you should hit the ground, therefore where the water is, therefore I am chayiv. So Rav says only if you sullied clothes. But if your person hurt himself, because who hurt him? The ground, which is not, there's no owner, it's ownerless. But if we said it's over to Shmuel, Amali, he said Mechti. Let me ask you a question. Avna, your stone, Sakina, your knife, Masaya, your bag, they're all a case of boir. I hold they're all a case of boir. We said before that even though you kept ownership, and it's a case of boir. The cool and the so once it's boir, what's the rule by boir? Shayir v'layadam, the person get killed. You're potted, and chamay v'lakalim, if a donkey falls into the boir, but not if Caleb. I hold just the opposite. So if I hold just the opposite, now what? That if you dirty the clothes, you're potter because it's boyer. If water is on the ground or your parts of your keli and somebody falls, that's boyer. So if you dirty the person's clothes, you're potter. But if you hurt the person, you're chayiv. We say shoyvel adam. Hani milalinik tolif. If a person gets killed in a boyer, you're exempt. Avalinian a zikin. If a person got hurt, Adam Chai B'Kaleb Tur. Person's Chai B'Kaleb Potter. So I heard exactly the opposite. Rav says the Mishnah is talking about like shoyer, and therefore if you dirty the clothes, you got to pay. But if the person got hurt from the ground, you're Potter because it's the ground that hurt him, and the ground belongs to nobody. It's Karka Olam. Shmuel says I hold this as bird, and therefore the other way around. The Kalim you're Potter. The clothes got dirty, you're Potter. But the person got hurt, you have to pay for that. Says Yamada, but Rav says Hani Mili. When do I say that it's bird? Hechadav Kerinu. When do I say it's boyd? When you made it, it's completely hefker, just like a boyd. But if you, let's say, didn't make it hefker, then it's considered your mammon, and it's like shoyd. It's exactly like shoyd. But when you fall down on the ground, the water is not what hurt you; it's the ground, and the ground, according to Rav, is potter because because the ground belongs to nobody. So who's going to pay that? Okay, so the Gemara. Most of the question it says if a cow, an ox, or a donkey falls in. So we say a cow, an ox, not a person. The kanomar he learn out the Caleb. If your shoyer or kalim fall in, then ishtabru and they broke. Or chamoy v'kaleb in his karu. So if an ox with his kalim falls in the boat, and the kelim broke. Or the donkey fell in with its in a bundle on top, and the bundle broke or ripped. Chayiv ala behema, you have to pay for the animal. Or potter ala kelim, and you have to you potter from the kelim because that's a din of bird. The din of bird is you are potter. What are we going to compare this case of bird to? To the case of avnei sakina masoy, your stone or your knife or your bundle. Shehinicham b'shusarabim, you place shusarabim. We're going to compare it to what? To a bird. So before we go on to ask our question, so here we see clearly that we're comparing a bundle in the street to a bird, not to a shur like Rav said. But before we get to our question, you're comparing bird to a stone. It's the other way around. Torah talks about you made a pit in the middle of the street. Then we learn out and we compare. If you placed a knife or a bundle on the street, it's just like placing a stumbling block, a bird. So why does the Brisa say that a bird is compared to a stone or avnei sakina and masoy? It should be the other way around. Avnei sakina masoy is compared to things. It's an adrabah. We should have said, what's compared to this? Ella, Ella, you're right. That's how we should say it. What is compared to this? What are we going to compare to a bird? Your stone, your knife, your bundle. You placed them in the street. The people got hurt. It's just like a bird. Therefore, if, for example, that somebody's jug hit a stone, chayiv, you are chayiv. So now it's a weird thing. You started off saying that the avnei sakina masoy are just like a bird, which is exactly like Shmuel. And then you conclude that if somebody's somebody's jug hits the stone, you're chayiv. If you learn that a stone is like a bird, what did we just establish by a bird? If a bird breaks somebody's pots and pans, you're exempt. But so if a bird, your potter, if your kalim breaking about your potter, so the din should be leficha. Therefore, the Brisa said, if your jug, your keli hits a stone, it's bar and your potter. The Brisa is a problem to both of them. So the beginning is a problem to Rav because the beginning says that we compare the stone to a bird, which is not like Rav who says that a stone. No, the stone is like shor because still you're the owner, and the Sefer who says that if you hit your jug against the rocks, you gotta pay. Holds that it's not like bird. It's like shor. Kasha l'shmul. You got a problem here. Says the Gemara, forget the Rav Shmuel. How you learn the Brisa? It's contradicting itself. But the time mechiv that if you take the Brisa literally, for the whole Brisa doesn't make sense. Why? The Reisha, you say that what if the keli breaks against the stone, you are potter, and the Sefer says if your keli breaks the stone, you're chayiv. So the Brisa is very cryptic. Forget the Rav Shmuel. We need to explain the Brisa. The beginning and the end are contradicting each other. The beginning you say that if you hit a Evan, your potter, and the Sefer says if you hit an Evan, you're chayiv. Which one is it? Rav will learn the Brisa according to him, who he says that a stone, if you still have ownership, it's your possession. It's just like a shor causing damage, and therefore you're chayiv on kelim. So therefore the sefer makes sense, but we need to explain the ratio. And Shmuel metaras dameh. Shmuel say no, a stone is like a boyer, and therefore the ratio makes sense. Why you potter by a stone if you bring your pots of pan? But I need to explain to you the sefer. I think more explain as follows. Rav metaras dameh that a stone is like a shor. But Medram, this is what the Brisa says. When do we say that you're exempt? That when you say you have to pay, when do we say that you are exempt? The beginning says that it's like a bird. When do we say that your stone is like a bird? Says Rav. Only if there's no longer any ownership. Davke kishahif kiran. If you're no longer the owner of the stone, that's not your possession anymore. So what is it? Then I agree, it's a bird. If you kept ownership of the knife, you kept ownership of the bundle, and you placed it in the middle of the street, according to Rav, since there's an owner here, that's shayid, chayiv. So therefore, if it's a shayid, then you have to pay for breaking vessels. However, Shmuel will answer according to his view. Now what? What is his view? His view is that even if you retained ownership, it's a buyer. And if it's a buyer, therefore you should be potter and kalim. So why does the Sefer say that if your jug hit the rock, you're chayiv? But now that I've established that a stone is just like a boy, is what? Is Li Rabbi Yehuda. You remember we learned before. Rabbi Yehuda argues, he says in Avhei, that he holds that the Kalim are chayiv in the bird. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it has it in a bird, he has it exactly in the bird. But Rabbi Yehuda, the mechayiv on this Kalim bird, he holds that you are chayiv for a Kalim bird. So suddenly Shmuel will learn the end of the Brisa goes according to the opinion of it's a bird. But within Boyd itself, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a Boyd, if it breaks your vases or your pots and pans, you have to pay. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to pay. And we'll learn later all about this Rabbi Yehuda. If you follow Rabbi Yehuda, even though it's like boyd, because Shmuel holds that even if you retained ownership, if it's the middle of the street, it's still boyd. So yeah, so it has a dinner bar. So according to us, if the pot breaks against the rock, you are potter. But according to Yehuda, you're chai. Amar Ablaza comes along and Ablaza says, Lo Yishanu, when do we say that if you hit your, let's say, your jug or your glass vase against the rock, that the din is at a boyer and chayiv according to Rav, because according to Rav, since you retain ownership at Shor, and according to Shmuel, according to Yehuda, is when is Elosh Niskal Bevin, you tripped over a stone, the Nasha Bevin, the stone caused you to trip, and you broke the glass, the vase against that very same stone. If what caused you to trip was nothing to do with this stone, was the ground, and the ground belongs to nobody. The Nasha Bevin, and then you smashed it against the stone, then potter, then you are potter. That's a very big rock, and you're walking, and you just went right, you somehow tripped. Now, we had before an argument, if there were two people involved, and we'll learn more about it, if you have two people involved in a damage, and one of them, let's say, is a tam, and let's say the tam pushes you in a bird. So the tam push can only pay half the 50%. What about the other 50%? So according to Chachamim, too bad. According to Rab Nosson, if two things are involved in the damage and one of them can't pay, you go to the other one. So according to Rab Nosson over here, since you tripped on the ground, who's going to pay you? Nobody. And you landed on the stone, according to Rab Nosson, the stone has to pay the full compensation. So obviously, command you like Rab Nosson. If he says that you tripped on the ground and you fell against a rock, you're exempt because we don't follow Rab Nosson. Ikadam is another version. Amar Ablaza light came, but don't think the only time you chayiv is if you tripped on the stone and you fell on the stone. But if you tripped on the ground and you landed on the stone, you potter. You're always chayiv. Command kid Rab Nosson, because we pass like Rab Nosson. That's what he wants to say. Okay, the Mishnah then says something very cryptic. Rabbi Yehuda says, if your intention, the Tana Kama says that if your water spilled or your pot is on the ground, you're always responsible. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends. If you had intention, you didn't have intention. Intention for what? Says the Gemara. What do you mean you had intention? What do you mean you had intention? If you had intention to lower it below your shoulder. So in other words, you had no intention of dropping it, you just intention to lower it. And then you slipped. And you slipped. And then you crash against the wall, and now you have smithereens, pieces everywhere, clay shards. Yeah. So we say, what do you call it? If you had intention to lower it, and then you slip, we say that what? You're chayiv. Why you chayiv? Because niskal peshayu, we're going to have an argument. If somebody slips, is that like negligence? Is your fault? You should have been more careful, or we say it's an accident. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if you had intention to lower it and you slipped, you're a pesheya, and therefore you are chayiv b'miskaven. That's what miskaven means. Miskaven is to lower it from your shoulder. And let miskaven means it just fell. If it just fell, then you are not chayiv at all. Okay, says Gemara, I'm going to buy it. No. Talking about the pot. Exactly. So if you had intention of lowering it, then you slip. So you are chayiv, because niskal slipping is not an excuse. Abaye said cases before on the previous page makes a whole difference if you slip on the ground or you slip because of an object. You slip because of an object is not the same thing if you slip on the ground. If you slip on the ground. That's a machlekes. If niskal peshay is you're walking down the street and you fell and we say, well, are you negligent? You should be more careful. But if you fell because somebody put something there, maybe everyone holds that it's not your fault really. Says the Gemara further, so and yet the Tana Kama says that you chayiv even if not miskaven. You have no intention. I feel nifsha. You have no intention of lowering it. Suddenly the pot, let's say, just broke in your hand, just disintegrated in your hand, and it falls down. And the Kama holds you chayiv. It's like an oinish. Yeah, if you're still holding on to the handle, and the keli just broke on its own. So when I say my honest was an honest, and Tej brings it out from the Gemara's question here, that even though we said before, Adam muad la'ila, a person is always responsible, even when it's an accident, but there are degrees of accidents. Because right here it says, honesu, You're exempt. It says, a woman who's raped, you don't do anything to her because what could she have done? When do we say that, if it's an accident, you're exempt only when it comes to matters of life and death? Maybe when it comes to Nazika, that's what we're talking about here. You're not talking about the girl who was raped, whatever. But it's talking about here that Nazikin, maybe Nazikin, even it's an accident, may hold you chayiv. The Tanakama holds you a chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda says that only with miskaven. But if it, you wouldn't miskaven, just fell apart, your pot. And the Tanakama holds, even though it's not your fault, all you chayiv, maybe. But Tanya, we learned. I'm going to prove to you that even Tanakama, which is Rameir, that even Rameir will agree that where there's a total accident, you're not responsible. So what's the machlekes in our mission between Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda? You tell me Rabbi Yehuda says if you had intention of lowering it, then you're responsible. If it fell out of your hand, you're not. Which means the Tanakama argues, you're always responsible. Even in Anainis, I'm going to prove to you that Tanakama, Rameir agrees if there's an Anainis, it's not your fault. For example, we looked at the Braisa Nishbra Kada, your barrel broke, well, it's silka, and you didn't pick up the pieces straight away. Or Nafal Gamla, your camel fell, you didn't stand them up. Rameir says Mechayiv Azekir. Rameir says you are chayiv for the damage that you caused. So because you should have picked up the pieces straight away, and you didn't. The Chachamim say Pater Medini Adam Mechai Medini Shemaim. Well, later on, I'll explain what it means. You should have taken the pieces up. In a court of law, we can't charge you, but you still should have removed the pieces. However, that sometimes if you didn't do something right, it's your fault. The avnus akina masoi shenichin berosh gado, where you place them on your roof, but the nafli beruach matzi, in a precarious place that even normal circumstances, good chance that it would fall down. Bezika, it caused damage. Then they say shu chayiv. You should have anticipated that. Even the chachamim say that's your fault, even though you didn't put it down, the wind blew it down, but you knew that you put it in a place that is going so rickety that it's going to fall down, and it's very likely to fall down. So they hold like our mayor that in this case. It's not an onus, it's your responsibility. It's like a pashia, a real negligence. Say if you cause any damage, you're chayiv.
It's a little pricey, you don't feel up.
It's not the same thing. It broke on its own. I should have cleaned it up. It's not the same thing that I put it somewhere where I caused it to break. That's the difference. Causing it to break, I'm more responsible. However, umayd, and this is the point you want to bring out. Umayd Ramei Rabbanan, the Ramei is made to Rabbanan, the Maile Kankin al Gad. You bring barrels up to the roof. I'm an aslan agman. You want them to dry; they're all wet. The naflu beruach she'ein mitzuyah. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind came, totally unexpected, and tossed it off the roof. Bezekin shu pater. A mayor is made. In that case, it's not your fault. So what do we conclude from here? A mayor hold that an is your pater. So what's the argument between a mayor and Rabbi Yehuda? And what do you mean miskaven? And what do you mean not?